This is Houston Newsmakers with Cambrell Marshall.
Good morning and welcome to Houston Newsmakers, where our topic this week and next will touch on immigration and its impact on the Houston region, perhaps in ways you may not know. President Trump signed an executive order saying he wants to temporarily ban travel from 7 countries as a way of, quote, protecting the nation from foreign terrorist entry into the United States. The implementation of that order was by many accounts, including the new Secretary of Homeland Security, retired General John Kelly, not as effective as it could have been and created chaos across the country and has also led to lawsuits. General Kelly saying this week the order should have been delayed a bit to iron out details and consult with Congress. Part of the controversy is whether or not the president's order is a ban based on religion, since the countries involved are majority Muslim. The president, as a candidate, said that is exactly what he intended to do.
Donald J. Trump is calling for a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States until our country's representatives can figure out what the hell is going on.
Now, what was said on the campaign, of course, takes a different legal form when it's part of an executive order, and we will let that play out in the courts. That is not a focus of our discussion this morning. Rather, I wanted to take a closer look at the refugee process that we hear so much about, at least one part of that process. Joining me this morning is Jeff Watkins. He is the Vice President for Global Initiatives at YMCA International. Good morning to you, Jeff.
Good morning, Cambrell.
What is the job of YMCA International? How is it different from the YMCAs that we're familiar with around the region?
International Services was created in 1978 to address the needs of arriving refugees. We are a resettlement agency, so we're tasked with helping refugees integrate to become self-sufficient in a very short period of time. And as I said, we've been doing this since 1978.
And in full disclosure, I am the chair of the annual campaign for the YMCA of Greater Houston, where the goal is to raise money to help families and seniors pay for services they might not otherwise be able to afford, such as after-school programs, teaching children to swim, summer camp, programs to help seniors stay in shape. So I know a fair amount about the YMCA, but talk to me about how refugees are assigned to you, your organization.
Right. Well, it's actually quite a lengthy process. Refugees, currently worldwide, there's 15 to 16 million refugees, and there's even more folks that have been displaced. A tiny percentage of those refugees that are identified as being most vulnerable are identified for what we call third country resettlement. Mm-hmm. The U.S. has always played a leadership role in terms of help for these most vulnerable refugee populations. There's a big process that takes place in terms of how refugees are processed overseas. Then once they're identified for resettlement in the U.S., they'll be assigned to agencies like the YMCA through 9 different voluntary agency networks.
How does it differ, the quote refugee characteristic, how does that differ from someone who's here on a visa, for example? Someone who's watching may not know what the difference is.
Right. A refugee, there's a technical definition for what a refugee is, and that is someone that has, one, had to flee their country, cross an international border, and can demonstrate a well-founded fear of persecution based on their race, religion, political opinions, participation in particular social groups. So it's a very legal definition that was set out by the 1951 Geneva Convention on the Status of Refugees. The dynamic is fundamentally different for refugees from other categories of immigrants.
How the process of getting into the country, we've heard that's been a part of the political conversation about vetting and the difficulty of being able to vet responsibly.
Right.
What is the vetting process?
Well, first of all, the process takes 18 to 24 months, in some cases longer. There are 11 different steps in the process. I would make the argument that the vetting is currently extreme. Numerous intelligence agencies are involved in the process. For populations of special concern, there are additional screenings and safeguards that are put in place.
The president would say that a lot of those countries that he's talking about, they don't have an infrastructure that can give you accurate information about who these people are.
Well, in many of the countries, Iraq in particular, there's a lot of information. A lot of the folks that are coming are individuals that work closely with U.S. interests and U.S. forces in our involvement there.
How comfortable are you that after the vetting process that people who come here and are resettled here won't be a part of any kind of conspiracy against the United States? Right. That's the big concern from those who are against a lot of the refugees and or people just coming into this country. Right.
I'm very confident in the process. I served this country in uniform myself. I consider myself a patriot. And no system is 100% foolproof, but I'm very confident that our country is doing everything that it can to ensure that the refugee program is not a likely vehicle for folks that are coming here with intent to do us harm.
I know that someone who was here in Houston a year or so ago was arrested, had been a refugee from Iraq, I believe. 2009 he came here to resettle, and he was arrested and charged with plotting to do things. That sends up red flags for a lot of people. You understand that?
I do. Again, where do we find that balance between this humanitarian program that saves lives and national security? And I know that's going to be an ongoing conversation. If in this process there are additional steps that can safeguard our country, I'm going to be in full support of those. But again, it's that balance. I've worked with refugees most of my adult life, and I know that it saves lives. And so finding that balance between making sure that these vulnerable individuals around the world can be safe and come to a place where they can rebuild their lives, because that is the desire of all the refugees that we're working with at YMCA International Services.